This Week with Bob Mueller on News 2.
This week,
we are totally committed to the safety of our children, and this legislation was designed to do just that.
The Republican supermajority legislature ignored opposition protesters and approved arming teachers. But so far, no school district has chosen to arm its school teachers. Pro-Palestinian protests on college campuses explode into violence and arrests. More in a This Week cover story.
The men and women of the police department also get discouraged because they keep rearresting these same people.
Metro's police chief says enough is enough, with criminal suspects being arrested only to be set free again and commit more crimes.
I think the most important thing to me is that we provide an Education Freedom Scholarship back to every family in the state who desires to make that choice.
Despite its defeat this legislative session, Governor Bill Lee remains confident a statewide school voucher system will be approved. Hello again and welcome to another edition of This Week. Metro Police Chief John Drake says enough is enough with suspects being arrested, then almost immediately being released on bail. Governor Bill Lee is not giving up on his statewide school voucher program, and despite legislation allowing teachers to be armed, so far no district in Tennessee is approving armed teachers. But we begin with the reclassification of marijuana as a less dangerous drug.
It's currently in the same category as heroin and LSD. Now, the DEA plans to reschedule marijuana to a less serious drug.
It's been proven for years that it's been a reliable, non-addictive, non-deadly product that can help many with many issues, including neurological issues.
Republican Senator Janice Bowling has drafted legislation to create a medical cannabis program in Tennessee for years, but her bill has always failed. The main point of contention, marijuana's Schedule I classification. Some Republicans previously said if the feds downgraded it, they'd reconsider.
It solves a lot of problems in that a doctor could prescribe it then, and I think it should be prescribed by a physician.
More than 80% of Tennesseans support legalizing marijuana in some capacity, according to a poll from MTSU. Democrats believe the DEA's move to downgrade cannabis could be the change needed to get some Republicans on board.
I ran a lot of legislation as regards to marijuana, and usually the reaction I get is that the federal government hasn't done anything yet, and until they do, we're not comfortable doing it. So I believe this would make a few of my colleagues a little bit more comfortable with holding the conversation about marijuana and even passing legislation as regards to the subject matter.
Regardless of whether Tennessee passes any marijuana-related legislation, Senator Bowling says if cannabis is moved from a Schedule I drug to a less serious Schedule III, Tennesseans could get a medical prescription for it in another state where it's allowed.
They will be able to get a legal product that is very helpful, very safe, a DEA statistic, never an overdose with a medical cannabis product.
So, if marijuana is legalized in Tennessee, what can we expect? News 2's Adam Mincer looked to other states for answers.
Tennessee is one of 10 states without legalized medical or recreational marijuana. But supporters of the cannabis industry, like Joey Fuson, now have higher hopes for the future.
I think it's big news for our country that there's a step in the right direction.
On Tuesday, the AP reported the federal government is on track to ease restrictions on marijuana while still keeping it as a controlled substance. So this won't have an immediate effect on Tennessee law.
However, I believe it could create a reevaluation of Tennessee law next year. And it may cause Tennessee legislators to actually seriously consider a medical marijuana program, which they have been reluctant to do thus far.
And if that resistance goes down, it does seem like there's an appetite for cannabis in the volunteer state. Trent Wolevec is the chief strategy director for Jushi Holdings. One of their cannabis dispensaries is just a few hours' drive from Nashville.
With our stores in Southern Illinois, we still see quite a bit of traffic from states that don't have a commercial adult use program in place.
Wolovic says Illinois has economically benefited from taxing cannabis products.
The state of Illinois is now collecting more cannabis tax than alcohol tax.
And it's not just Illinois. According to the Arizona Department of Revenue, last year the state brought in $287 million in taxes from cannabis.
This is a vindication of the industry, a validation of the industry.
But there is a negative aspect of legalization. A study by the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City found in states that legalized marijuana, substance use disorder increased 17%, and chronic homelessness increased by 35%. One highway safety research group also found it can impact crashes.
So we see higher insurance claim rates for collision, and we also see more injury crashes.
However, as far as fatal crashes, that group says the evidence is mixed.
Tennessee school districts could soon allow teachers to carry guns on campus, but so far, none have openly said they will.
It's a concept adopted in more than 30 states across the country. Tennessee is the latest to sign it into law.
This legislation was definitely designed, again, to help those rural counties that feel like they need to have a layer of protection in place in the event that they don't have a school resource officer.
There are around 500 schools across Tennessee that currently don't have an SRO. Bailey sponsored the legislation letting teachers fill the SRO gaps, allowing them to carry guns on campus. But so far, no school district we've asked has directly said they'll allow it. Even some rural ones the bill was designed for say the opposite. Anderson County writing, quote, "We fear this could potentially introduce unnecessary risks into the educational setting." Robertson County Schools Director calling it, quote, "blurring the line between education and law enforcement," despite saying he respects the legislature for passing it. Many other rural districts, including Bailey's own Putnam County, haven't flat out said no. Some are considering next steps. Despite the backlash and protests over the legislation, Bailey says protecting students and staff in schools is the main goal.
We are totally committed to the safety of our children, and this legislation was designed to do just that.
Now to our This Week cover story. The week began with college campuses across the country erupting with escalating protests over the Israel-Hamas war. Police made more and more arrests as the protests turned violent. A focal point was Columbia University.
Defiance at Columbia University. Pro-Palestinian protesters refusing to dismantle their tents despite a warning to leave this campus lawn or face suspension.
We will not be moved by these intimidation tactics. We will not be moved unless by force. Free, free Palestine! Free, free the hostages!
Outside Columbia's gate, NYPD officers taking this woman into police custody. But after more than 100 arrests here 10 days ago, the school says calling the NYPD back inside campus would only inflame the situation. Columbia's president pleading with protesters to clear the way for graduation, pointing out many seniors missed out on high school celebrations due to the pandemic. But organizers insist this is a bigger issue.
There's no universities in Gaza. There are thousands of students who have been killed, who they don't have the luxury to have commencement.
Columbia says it will not divest from Israel, as protesters have demanded here and at more than 60 other colleges across the country with protests against the war in Gaza.
It's important for us as U.S. citizens to stand up and let our voices be heard about it, because it's our tax dollars that are going to funding this thing.
For the second time in a week, arrests at the University of Texas in Austin.
Let them go! Let them go!
State police moving in as protesters refuse to disperse.
There's no riot here! Why are you in riot gear?
Several arrested at the University of Georgia, too. Officers taking some of the encampment down. At all of these protests, Jewish students on both sides of this issue. Some students say they've been harassed.
We can't be intimidated off the mob. It's not easy to stand here alone when the whole university is practically against us.
Here at Columbia, officials acknowledging how hard it has been for many Jewish students. Some students say there's discrimination on both sides.
The anti-Semitism that's occurred around campus is real, it's horrible, and it's disgusting and it needs to be addressed. But so does the stuff that's happening to Arab, Brown, Black, and Muslim students.
Stay with us. This Week continues in a moment.